Okay, I think we're live. I'm testing out a new pair of headphones. For those of you who are trickling in, you can tell me if you're able to hear me. I know the voice was a little bit patchy in the last video. At least when I move in too close to the speaker to the computer, it gets a little hard to decipher. But those of you who are in the chat can tell me if oh, something happened to my chat. I don't know what that is. I just the chat disappeared, so I'm gonna have to wing it. But anyway, I guess I'll find out if since I cannot see the chat for some reason. Anyway, it's funny. There was, I think this was Gabe Hughes, a pastor who runs that channel, When We Understand the Text. He had a tweet the other day that said, you should never begin any video or live stream with the word okay, which is what I what I begin virtually every live stream, every non pre-recorded video. I begin by saying okay. I guess it is a filler word in some sense. It's just a substitute. It's kind of like when people say like or they're just delaying the period between thoughts. So it's kind of it's something I should work on, I suppose. But it's a tradition, so I'm kind of used to it by now. So I might take a while to change. Anyway, the main now that I've wasted 2.5 minutes, the Coof Police, the COVID, the pro-vax push that you see throughout society, American society, but also the UK, and I'm sure it's the same thing in Eastern countries. I know in India, COVID has taken a particularly hard toll. There, you see these news stories about corpses floating down the Ganges, and it sounds kind of disturbing. So I'm sure the public health campaigns are pretty tenacious in other countries as well. But it's becoming more and more. And I was speaking with some people about this the other day, and one of them mentioned 1984, and it really is starting to resemble this dystopian alternative future depicted by Orwell. And I'm sure people who live in the UK, in Scotland and England, particularly large metropolises like London, single day, whenever they take the tube, use mass transit, walk around, they have the ring of steel there where you're under constant surveillance. I think there's more cameras per capita in that city probably than anywhere else in the industrialized world. So, and you see these warnings about essentially thought crime. Since there's no real freedom of speech in the UK, you have all of these ordinances policing people's thoughts and prescribing various hate crimes, sending mean tweets about a protected class of citizens. So you have, and if you've ever watched these, and it's funny because you can do a mock-up of of a fake PSA and put it side by side with a real PSA, and they're virtually indistinguishable. You can't tell the difference. That's how it's become over there. And you're seeing this particularly over the past year, ever since the lockdown was instituted. You see this throughout the United States, especially if you live in a place like New York City. I don't know what it's like in the Midwest or Southwest. I can't imagine it being as horrific as it is here, but you see it everywhere, especially if you take public transportation. On the subways, they have these signs admonishing people and warning people how they have to wear masks, how they have to wear masks, how they have to mask up, how they have to wear face coverings. You see this virtually in every store as well. Even the bodegas and bagel stores, they don't really have bodegas over here, but the bagel stores, you see them now, they have mask um, compliance posters and signs, and these are businesses that comply with very few laws to begin with. And the thing is, it's not even a law; it's an edict from a governor who had and and a state that has the legislature hasn't been convened in half a year or 5 months. I don't even know when the last time the New York legislature met was, but they say it's the law and you have to obey this. But the really disturbing part, if you want to look at it this way, comes afterwards, because you hear these public service announcements in buses from various D-list celebrities like Edie Falco, who haven't been in the public spotlight for a decade. You hear them saying that you have to wear a mask because it's the law. And then, almost as an addendum, they say, and it's a nice way to avoid contact with any with the people you don't want to talk to. And this is reinforced if you look around at the printed advertisements related to COVID. You have you have signs where you have three these stick figure people or stick figure heads. They show their heads and their torsos with two black eyes and a nose, or no nose, and you have one with who's not wearing a mask, or who's wearing a mask around their chin, and there will be a big X saying this is wrong, um, or this is bad. And then in the next panel, even though they're not subdivided into panels, in the next space, you see that person wearing a mask sitting next to a male figure wearing a mask sitting next to a female figure wearing a mask over their noses, but they're talking to each other. And it'll read, "This is good." And then in the very final panel, you have these two individuals completely ignoring each other, staring at their cell phones. And this is the upshot of this little perverse cartoon. It'll say, "This is the best." So in other words, the best way to interact with someone is to ignore them and stare at your cell phone. And this is really something. this is this is this is the end game when you really look at what these people are trying to do. The end game, individuals who are completely dependent upon the state, who have no who including for not only for their income, but for their ideas and beliefs. They want people, a docile, compliant group of sheep, essentially, that will follow their orders no matter no matter how contradictory or fallacious those orders happen to be. And this is really what they want. And no entrepreneurship, no small businesses. They want those to be crushed, to be replaced by these giant corporate behemoths like Amazon and basically a monopoly. And that's what the goal is. And you saw a preview of this back in the 20th century, in the first half of the 20th century during the New Deal. There was a great book by Burton Fossa, an economist, who wrote a book called New Deal or Raw Deal question mark, and it was a rhetorical question because the book proceeds to outline the catastrophic consequences of President Roosevelt's New Deal and the decision that was made to yoke corporate entities to the state. In essence, it was a soft, or ostensibly was a soft form of fascism. And we're seeing that on an even larger scale today. And I just want to I don't want to make a long video, so I'm just going to wrap this up by using an anecdote from my own experience this past weekend. As in my last video, I described our encounters with the non-English speaking Muslim population of Queens. We were out there as part of Operation Samaria to spread the gospel to our neighbors who might not have been exposed to it in their daily lives. And one of the striking features of that day was how prolific these vax tents were. You had about half a dozen of these vaccination tents. People basically, and I don't know whether these were workers enlisted by the city. I don't know if they belonged to a nonprofit. They didn't really specify. It's all seemed very shady, to be honest. But they were there to lure people into being vaccinated. And it was so utterly bizarre. And I spoke with someone at my church about this, who wasn't there that day. And I told him what was so what was so revealing about that day was that the COVID people, the vaxxers, these workers who were trying to get people to be jabbed with the COVID vaccine, they were much more zealous than any of the Muslims we encountered. We didn't see, aside from one guy who I think was associated with a local mosque, they are trying to proselytize us. They weren't out there. I had a spirited debate with one of them, a Muslim convert, but otherwise, the Muslims were kind of indifferent. They weren't out there trying to they weren't doing dawah, in other words. But the COVID people, they were zealous. They were as zealous as the Pharisees that Paul describes in his epistle to the Romans. They were really eager to try to lure people in. It was almost, I was joking about this, but it reminded me of those anti-drug PSAs you saw, particularly during the 1980s and 1990s, where you would see this creepy-looking drug dealer walk out of the shadows and go, psh, 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 hey, kid, come on. That's what it reminded me. They were just like, carnival barkers, just trying to pitch people on getting vaccinated. And it was also bizarre. One of the best moments was when I saw this guy with an American flag face mask walk past them and get into an argument with ladies. And he the culmination of this debate was him saying, I just don't trust it, and he walked off. But most of the people, it was surprising how many people were eager to get this. They were just seeking them out. Some of them even passed us by and and came to the one of these vaccination tents, which was I mean, even if you're going to get vaccinated, even if you think this is a good idea, why would you do it at some random intersection in between, Miss um Miss Kim's psychic readings and Taverna, kebab shop? Like, why would you? Why would you say this is the place you want to get the jab? It was all really bizarre, and it reminded me a little bit of what David Wood said in his last live stream when he was talking with the apostate prophet, and he said for years he had been concerned about Islamic proselytization and the resisting it, particularly in the West. These multicultural societies, the people who run them were eager to break down the Christian West, so they were allying with people who theoretically don't share any common values or interests. And he was worried about this because he saw the spread of Islam. But the more he thought about it, and the more he saw Muslims, particularly second or third generation Muslims in these Western societies, and he looked around and saw Muslims turning away from Islam, he realized that this might be the bigger threat. This globalist, uh, this globalist entity that really has no spiritual values to speak of, and just wants to force people to comply. The type of people that run the EU, and the type of people that run the these international organizations, Soros and Bill and Melinda Gates, the eugenicists. These people he thinks might be a bigger threat in the long run to Islam, and I kind of agree. I don't think Islam. I mean, there's some people who think it'll the tribulation, and I do think those peoples, the people the people who are predominantly Muslim now, they will be the Arab people. I think will definitely play a huge part in that, but I don't think it'll be under the banner of Islam. I think this, what you see now, is kind of the template, and I'm not necessarily saying these people are, you know, that they are the Antichrist, but I think they're conditioning people to accept this new world order as it's depicted in Revelation. So, uh, yeah, it's kind of disturbing, but we will see. Anyway, I can't see if anyone's posting in the chat. I can't see it because I'm technically illiterate, but I'm as illiterate in technology as Muhammad was in literature, in books. So I will respond to comments made once this video is posted, and I will see you later.